Hi, teammates. I'm going to model how to write an interpretation. So interpretations will always follow your quotes, and they will explain what the quote means, why it's important, and you'll make a connection in some way. So we're going to start simple and build on this throughout the year, because honestly, this can be the hardest part about writing your essay. So let's just go over the steps. I'll give you some examples, and then I'll model how I would do this, how I would write an interpretation. So the first step, you want to ask yourself, what is the actual meaning of this quote? So the first step, you can actually restate what the quote means in your own words. Just tell me what the quote means in your own words. Then you'll choose, second step, you'll choose an interpretation strategy. This is how you will go beyond the quote. So do it with me. Go beyond the quote. Think of like Buzz Lightyear, to infinity and beyond. We're going to go beyond the quote. Okay, you already quoted it, but why is it important? What does it mean? You can, if you want to get a little more advanced, you can ask yourself, what strategy works best with the quote I chose? If you want to go simple, you can just say, this quote is important because, and then just tell me why it's important. The third and final step, make sure your interpretation connects to your assertion in a new way. So let's just go over these 3 steps. Restate the quote. Step 1, tell me what it means in your own words. Step 2, go beyond a quote. Pick an interpretation strategy. And then third, make sure your interpretation connects to your assertion. So I'm going to model this for you. These are some ways you can go beyond the quote. You can tell me why the quote is important. You can make an inference about the quote. You can explain a cause and effect. This led to, a result of this was. You could focus on one part of the quote, like one piece of data or information, and zoom in on it. Or you can make a connection to yourself, the world, or the text. So let's scroll up to my example. Pretend you don't see this part right here. So this is my first quote in pink. So this is talking, let's read my assertion and my quote, and then I'll show you how to write interpretation. The Algonquin people used many natural resources for survival, including food. And my quote is, they made maple syrup from the groves of maple trees. So the first step, I'm going to restate the quote. We're going to type this in blue. Algonquin people, how would I restate this in a new way? So they took maple syrup from trees. So gathered maple syrup from trees. I just restated the quote in new words, and I just restated it. Now I need to go beyond the quote. I think the strategy I want to use is I want to tell why this quote is important, and I also am going to use a little cause and effect. I know that they didn't only gather syrup from trees. They actually used it during celebration, so I'm going to expand upon that, and I'll show you what I wrote. We're just going to focus on what's in blue, and we'll come back to the rest at the bottom here. So if you see in blue, Algonquin people gathered maple syrup from trees. I restated. Now I'm going to go beyond the quote. The Algonquins did that for a celebration after a cold winter. This is important. So that's my sentence stem. This is important because food was not only used for survival. Whoops, little typo there. For survival, but also for celebrations and gatherings. So I restated the quote, and then I chose the strategy of why is this quote important, and I explained it. So that is my interpretation for that quote. It should be at least 2 sentences. Your interpretation should always be at least 2 sentences because you need to restate and then go beyond the quote. I'm going to show you a few more examples. So my next quote in pink, I won't read you my interpretation just yet. So we're still talking about food and the resources they used. These include water. These include water from lakes, wood from the trees, meat from animals, and berries and other edible plants from the bushes and trees. All right, so I'm going to restate this quote. This quote shows me that they used all the resources around them for survival. And that's pretty much what I wrote about, so I'll show you my interpretation now. These help keep I'm going to change that. These resources help to keep the Algonquins safe in stormy weather, full, and hydrated. So I restated how they use these resources, and now I'm going to go beyond the quote and tell you why it's important. This illustrates, so that's my sentence stem. Illustrates just mean this shows, or this reveals, this demonstrates how the Algonquin people utilize resources in their environment to meet their basic survival needs. So again, I told you what the quote means in my own words, and then I went beyond it by telling you why that quote is important. I'm going to go over one more example with you. Remember, I have an extra quote and interpretation, but you only need 2 quotes and 2 interpretations for each body paragraph. You're going to do a total of 4. So you'll have 4 quotes, 4 interpretations, 2 body paragraphs. All right, last example. I have another context here. The Algonquins were mostly forests and fishermen. Cool, that sets up my quote. Let's read my quote now in pink. There was also some farming, and they planted corn, beans, and squash. Fish was also used to fertilize cornfields. Okay, so I see that they use the 3 sisters, so I'm going to restate that quote because I know the 3 sisters are corn, beans, and squash. And then I'm going to go beyond the quote and explain why this is important. So I wrote, the Algonquin people adapted to their environment by fishing, hunting, and farming. Again, I just restated the quote in my own words. Then I go beyond it. Beyond. This is significant or important because they planted the 3 sisters and utilized other resources like fish to improve their crop harvest. So this shows, I could even add on to it, how this shows that they utilized every resource they had available to make a better life. I'll add that too. The Algonquins used all the resources available to them to improve their quality of life. So I even made a connection or an inference. That would be an inference. And that's how I went beyond the quote. So just to review, you restate the quote in your own words. Just restate what it means. Then choose an interpretation strategy. You can either make an inference. I wrote that they used all the resources available to improve their life. That's an inference. You can tell me why the quote is important. This is significant because this illustrates how they use resources to meet their basic survival needs. Or this is important because food was not only used for survival, but also for important celebrations and gatherings. So tell me why the quote is important is a strategy. You can make a connection. You could zoom in on one part of the quote and explain it. The possibilities are endless. Just make sure that you're restating and choosing one way to go beyond the quote, and those sentence stems should help you. Good luck.